Hi, good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us, and welcome to the joint EAL and IET webinar. I'm just going to start the webinar in a few moments, so please bear with us. And hopefully you should be able to see the screen and myself and Mark Coles from the IET. Just give this a few moments. Excellent. Good thumbs up there. And we will be manually admitting people as well as they join. It's probably a setting I should have done beforehand. Hi, Mike. Good to see you. So please bear with us. So we are presenting this webinar from home. So please excuse any unwanted background noise or delay in the slides. Now, Mark, would you possibly, can you admit people through the lobby? Would you mind doing that? Hopefully you'll be able to do that. I think there's a setting I probably should have switched on in Teams, which I'll remember for next time.
I notice here we've got a bit of time travel going on. We're not in February, we're in April.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes, of course. Good spot. It's always the obvious things. Yeah. I don't think anyone would notice that otherwise, but good spot. So, welcome to the webinar. Just to say, please type any questions you have during the webinar in the question and answer area within the Teams and not the chat. And we will have a question and answer section at the end. All attendees, you will be muted, but the session is recorded later on for distribution. So please share it with your colleagues. So to run through, the aim of the presentation is to give you a walkthrough of Amendment 4 with Mark from the IET, provide updates on qualification changes to the Wiring Regulations Award and related electrical qualifications, and information on a range of resources and other updates and news, as well as the question and answer section at the end, myself and Mark. So I'm now introducing the speakers today. You have myself, Kevin Sparrow, Senior Industry Manager for Building Services Engineering at EAL. And I'm really pleased to introduce special guest speaker, Mark Coles, Head of Technical Regulations at the IET. So hello, Mark.
Hi there, Kevin. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome.
Great to have you with you here today. I know you've been busy over the last few days talking about Amendment 4, and you've done certainly a BSI webinar also yesterday, and hopefully that went well for yourself.
It's good. The benefit here is I've done 3 webinars on this now, so hopefully I know what I'm talking about. But the thing is, I've found out all the bits and pieces I didn't know that I could bring into this one. So hopefully it'd be helpful.
Brilliant. So in fact, this is going to be the best webinar. This is what you're saying. So this is good news. So really, let's get into it. I'm going to hand over to Mark to run through Amendment 4 updates and changes, and then I'll run through the qualification updates on after that. So over to you, Mark, and look forward to hearing your presentation.
Right, there we are. Thank you. Next slide, please, then, Kevin. And the next one again. There we are. Anyway, so yeah, I'm Mark Coles. I head up technical regulations at the IET. So if you've got a copy of the Orange Book yet, you'll see in the early pages, page 2, you'll see a breakdown of what is JPL 64. This JPL 64 is the committee that manages BS 7671, and you see myself in there and the staff. So we're involved with putting the standard together. We're also involved internationally. So everything that goes into BS 7671, 95% of it, I would say, has come from an international perspective. So it's standards for the world, brought into Europe, brought into the UK. But I'll come on to that in my next slide. On the screen there, you'll see this is a timeline that IET marketing has been using. And what this is demonstrating is, yes, in April 2026, i.e. from yesterday, this is when the Orange Book went live. And that is, the Brown Book will be, it will be withdrawn on the 15th of October 2026. So there's that 6-month period where the new's brought in, and there's time to book courses for manufacturers to get their products on the shelves, and then to phase out the old. And this allows, again, 6 months for any installations you have planned to hopefully get them done before the brown is withdrawn, so that when you provide your client with a certificate at the end of the job, it's all complete, it's within that time frame, and you're not leading over into the next period. So that's really that one about where we are. And now then, why now? I know people aren't happy about having to buy another book, having to buy another course, and I get that. We're on a Fourth Amendment, and conventionally with British standards, you're permitted 2 amendments. But we had an amendment in 2020 that was about EV. Something came out of the woodwork, and BS 7671 had to react pretty quickly to take on that particular safety issue. So there's an amendment in 2020. Then we saw an amendment 2 years ago in 2024, which was about the bidirectional, unidirectional devices. That came out of the woodwork. So something had to happen. So when an amendment like an unexpected amendment comes along, we then go to BSI and say, please can we have permission for another amendment? And we usually granted it. So we're up to 4 amendments now. There's no telling if there'll be a 5th amendment, but there could be. Something could come out of the woodwork, because we've seen that up to now. So there could be a 5th amendment, but nothing on the horizon yet. Should be stable for quite some time. As I said, the bulk of BS 7671 is based on what comes through internationally. Here's the slide here. So you'll see this is preface page 18, and you can see on the left-hand side you've got the HD or the IEC document. HD is harmonized documents. These are European documents because we're aligned with what goes on in Europe in terms of protection against electric shock, the type of devices. If you think about circuit breakers, they're BSEN. EN is the European norm, Euro norm. It's the European standard for those devices. So we're aligned with what goes on in Europe. And you'll see just to the right of where you've got an HD or IEC reference, you'll have a date, and that's the version of the HD or IEC document that's gone into BS 7671. Now what I can do is put in the chat and put a link to the IEC website, which shows you what's being discussed right now. And what's being discussed right now will find its way into BS 7671 at a next iteration. So I can put a link in the chat, and that shows you what's going on and what's likely to change in the future. So I think that is, for me and people in my world, an interesting thing, because things then aren't so much of a surprise when they come along as time goes on. So that's an overview. But before we go any further, I also want to say that yes, people complain, got to buy another book, or whatever, we've got to change, we've got to do things differently. And I've said this a number of times, that if we didn't change, we'd be stuck. So let's say we keep it stagnant for 10 years. We don't change anything. It changes now, and we keep it as it is until where we'll be, 2036. And in that time, we've done the courses we need, we've got the books, and we just work and we do our thing. But the rest of the world is still moving on. And the rate of change of products, technology that are coming into electrical installations, by the time we get around to retraining 10 years from now, the uplift and the investment needed to get up to speed with the rest of the world will be pretty enormous and just not possible. So unfortunately, there will be regular updates. There have been, of course, over the years since 1882, but there will be continual updates to BS 7671 as time goes on, and that is just because of the way the world is. It doesn't sit still. So Kevin, if you let's go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to get into the long grass. With the press release for BS 7671, which was put out in January, and the information that we've been permitted to talk about until yesterday, there's just been 4 topics. It's been medical locations, it's been section 716, which is power over Ethernet, 545, which is ICT equipment, earthing and bonding in those areas. And what else was there? There was something else, and I've gone completely blank on it. Who can tell me? That's the first question of the day. Anyway, there were 4 big ticket items that were aired. But what I want to do is I want to get down into the long grass and point out these bits and pieces which are very important. I cannot cover everything because It might seem initially there's not a lot of change to this standard, but when you get into the long grass, there certainly is, and there's lots of nuances that, again, your lecturers should be able to pick up on and put those over to you. So, without further ado, let's get into this. This is, I'm going to say new. This is PNB. So this is figure 3.9b, TNCS, PNB. So there are two variants of the TNS arrangement. So TN, terra, as in, I'm going to say it's French, but then somebody pointed out to me it's Latin, but it means earth, as in pomme de terre, which is apple of the earth, potato, terre is earth. So T is earth, N is neutral, and then the C is combined. So out in the street, you'll find it on a TNC arrangement. You've got that combined pen conductor, which performs a functionality for your neutral currents and the earthing arrangement, if you like. That's the TNC. When it gets into the building, it's separated. S, that's the TNS. Now there are two variants. There's PME, protective multiple earthing, and PNB, protective neutral bonding. PNB is the kind of thing you see in rural areas where you might be out in a field somewhere like that. There might be a farmhouse and you'll see a transformer on a pole, and there'll be a green and yellow conductor coming down to an earth electrode. And from what I understand, the requirement from the DNO is that that earth electrode belongs to the supplier, but it's earthed down as close to the premises as possible, and it tends to feed just one building, one premises being the curtilage of the whole thing, farm buildings, whatever. It's not TT. It is certainly TNCS. It is an earth system, but of course from that you can arrange a TT beyond that. Now there's not a lot on PNB. PNB used to be in, going back, and I think it was removed in the Yellow Book in 2015, but it might have been earlier than that. But it was in as a reference, as another format of another type of system, another arrangement. But it's gone back in again, and all its reference really is a particular note in BS 767 alluding to. You might come across PNB in addition to PME, but in all cases where you do come across PNB, you would say that TNC conditions apply, and therefore you'd size your conductors in accordance with TNCS, i.e. PME. So that's all that's cropped up there. So Kevin, next slide, please. And I want to point out now into 421, if you do have your book there, I'm fortunate, the webinars I've done this week, I haven't had my book at hand, but now I have today, so there's no excuses. So I'm going to flip through my pages as we get through, and then when we get onto questions later on, we can I can flip back to those. But into chapter 42, the protection against thermal effects, 42117, change in terminology. High risk residential building, HRRB, is now high rise residential buildings. This is something that's gone on external to BS 7671. Essentially, since the Grenfell fire, there's been a lot of focus on that style of building, cladding. What are the risks? And there was talk of, over a number of floors or buildings being over whatever height. And in the discussions elsewhere, that is now the categorization. HRRB is high-rise residential building, not high risk anymore. Then 422.2, modification to further define the areas of protective escape route. And the next one, 42222, new regulation bringing clarity where cables are contained within a fire-resisting enclosure. What this was about was, we saw the introduction, number of iterations, was it last iteration of the Brown Book? Introduction of the protected escape route. So you think about it, you might see these kind of things in football stadiums, that kind of thing, and it's a very bare, bleak, concrete escape route. There's nothing in there other than the basic things like a handrail, steps, and lighting. There might be fire alarm system in there, but anything in there, it's very basic stuff that has to be there, but anything that's in there is sufficiently fire rated. And the requirement previously was, you shall not run cables through this area. It might be easier to get through that way, but you can't take cables, so you've got to go around, and what a fight that will be. So what's going on this time is that if you can take cables through that area, but they've got to be boxed in a fire resisting enclosure to make it as impervious as if it wasn't there. So that's a new change that's gone in. Again, these things are in the long grass, and once you delve into BS 7671, you'll see also on each page where there's been a change, you'll see a little mark to the right of the page These are the bars indicating where change has gone along. So where you do see these, just pay a bit of attention and see what's going on. Right, next slide, Kevin. If you think I'm waffling too much, please shout, Kevin. He hasn't
No,
said anything.
it's really insightful, Mark. Please waffle away. We'll try and keep it to an hour, but no, this is really insightful for everyone. So please carry on.
What I did say, I've got nothing in my calendar immediately after this, so I could be around for a bit longer. Anyway, this is on this slide here. This is an extract from Table 51. This is identification of conductors, and this is all about that. You know, line is brown, L1 is brown, L2 is black, L3 is grey, etc. But what's gone in here is the bottom one, and it's the functional bonding conductor, and this is pink. Now, in the past, we had the functional earthing conductor would have been cream. That changed to pink. Now the bottom one's gone in, and this is in relation to what's gone into section 545, which is for ICT equipment, which I'll touch on in a bit. But you'll also see on the right-hand side for these particular functions of conductor, the symbols have gone in, which might help. It's not a normative regulatory thing, but it's just there for ease when you get involved in drawings and the like, schematic diagrams. Okay, next slide please, Kevin. Right, into chapter 52. This is selection and erection of wiring systems. So in 521.10.202, in the note at the end, there's a clarification on the intent of premature collapse. If I just jump to that one, there it is, and I'll read it to you. The intent of this regulation is to prevent general collapse of wiring systems as to result of the exposure or the effects of fire, such that they would hinder the safe evacuation, rescue, or access to firefighters. So it's all about that. There've been a few fires where firefighters have gone in and they've had, you know, the breathing apparatus and cables that have fallen off through plastic trunking just tacked onto the walls. They've got ensnared around their breathing apparatus, and how dreadful. So that's where this came about. Premature collapse. You don't want things collapsing when you need to get in, want to get out, or those that need to go into the building. There needs to be fixing methods which are suitable to avoid that, certainly for a period of time. Right, moving on to 52262. If you're with me with your book, if you've got it, the requirements in 52226 for cables buried in walls, how deep they needed to be, the zoning arrangements, do they need RCDs or not, what if you've got SELV and PELV, and a table's been put together to make this easy, because there's kind of circular references within there, and that's been amended. There's been a lot of good response, I think, to this particular table, and this came about because of the DPC. So the DPC is draft for public comment. When BS 767, all British standards are amended, they go out for public comment, and this enables people to say, crikey, this is a load of rubbish, why don't you put it like this, or I don't understand this, can you be clear? And this is one of those that came from the public consultation period, which of course is important, and when the next one that comes along, whenever that will be, I urge everyone to get involved in that. So that was that one. On to 522.8.10, information provided for the protection of buried or unarmoured cables. What this is about, if you look at that particular regulation, what's gone in the note is the particular rating for the duct and how impervious it is to to weight and impact. 522.8.10, and this is the compression. It's N750. 750 is the rating in newtons that the ducting should be able to withstand. There are other ratings of ducting that you can get which are less reliable, less strong, for want of a better expression. So 750 is the type that's gone into that. Then 522.691. This is the classification of conductors, and this is where it separates out the type of conductor, whether it's solid, stranded, fine wires, and defines the difference between rigid and flexible. If you can see that table, you'll see that classes 3 and 4 are not included, and that's because they were included in the previous standard, which I think was, it does say there, BSEN 60228, and classes 2 and 3 have been superseded by what's in class 2 and what's in class 5. So it's not a mistake that classes 3 and 4 are missing. So that's that one. Okay, next one please, Kevin. Yeah, so 53, this is protection, isolation, switching, control and monitoring. 5364202, load curtailment shall be used to limit the maximum current demand for the assembly. So 5364202. So when you're working out maximum demand for an installation, and this is happening, the problem I'm going to highlight is happening such a lot. We've been in discussions with ENA. So you think about it, you've got a heat pump going in, you've got EV charging, you've got other loads going on. And if you follow, for instance, what's in IT guidance, still in IT guidance, in guidance note 1 and also the on-site guide, you can come out with super duper values of 160 amps, 200 amps for a dwelling. And when people were following guidance on this and then putting a request into the DNO and say, we've got 100 amps on this supply, can I upgrade it to 180? And they're going, what on earth do you need that for? Now, what's in IT guidance is a kind of keep you out of jail kind of approach. It won't give you the most economical result, but it will err on the side of caution. But with engineering experience and your judgment and knowing how the installation will be used, it allows you then to make a better assessment of maximum demand. And what this is saying in 53622 is that load curtailment. So load curtailment can be used. Load curtailment means, for example, let's say you've got a heat pump running and EV charging. It might be the EV with the CTs, the current transformers that monitor what's going on. It might be the EV charger says, hang on a minute, we're getting up to the top here, up towards 100 amps or whatever, I'll ramp it down or I'll switch off completely. That's load curtailment. So what's gone in here is that using that form of technology allows you to dynamically control a maximum demand, so you're not going over the top. So that can form part of your designs. That's a really interesting one. Next one here is table 537.4. Now this is the table about the types of devices that provide isolation and switching, also protective devices. So for instance, if you're looking for an isolator for something and you've got a device, because remember that some devices are good to switch whilst current is flowing. Other devices are not suitable for that, and this table helps you with choosing the right device. This just highlights that a number of product standards have gone in to enable the procurement of the right kind of device for the installation that you're working on and the design. So I hope that helps. Next one, please, Kevin. Yeah, this is another interesting one that's gone in. We're aware of the different types of RCDs, and as you delve into that diagram, you'll see there's type AC, type A, type B, type F. Is it a little bit? No, that's it. It's the bottom of the screen there. Of course it is. What this shows you is that you've got to be careful about where you put the particular type of devices. Now, the AC RCD, for example, that's been outlawed in the likes of Germany, countries like that, since, well, in Germany it was the 1980s, and they just don't use them because they're suitable for resistive loads like showers, old style showers. And I say old style showers, equipment that doesn't have any electronics in it, because electronics can impose DC waveforms, and by waveforms, conventionally DC doesn't have a waveform, but if it's pulsing, you could sort of look at it like that. It's DC, it's DC, it's DC. Now certain devices like this type AC device don't cope with that very well. The older types, like I was going to say like Kevin and I, but I'm older than him, so I'll say older types like me and Kevin. We'll remember that there used to be a Robin test instrument that allowed you to test RCDs. You sort of pushed in the button and turned it like a thumb wheel, and you locked it. And what that did was you could test an RCD. Sorry, you could take a measurement of earth fault loop impedance, but conventionally the RCD would trip because you put in essentially you're directing the current elsewhere to earth. But
I used to have one of those, Mark. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. So you saturate the core with direct current. Sorry, please carry on.
No, that's it. There was a thumb wheel that you turned, and what it did, it put DC into the toroid of the RCD, and it locked it, so it would ignore the test that was being carried out and stay closed and in circuit. And that's what happens with these AC type RCDs, that can be blinded by the DC that's being produced by modern equipment like variable speed drives, inverters, that kind of thing. to an extent. I mean, you see, for instance, when you buy washing machines, dryers, what was the one we were talking about this morning? Dishwashers. There's a certain type of high-end manufacturer that requires a Type F. Type F are very expensive, but that's what's happening. The equipment's putting out these kind of DC currents, affecting the RCD. So anyway, this is a good, helpful image to allow you to decide which type of RCD you're using and where it goes in the installation in terms of upstream, downstream of all this. Yep, thank you. Moving on. He's pushing me now, I'm talking too much. This new section 545. This is a wordy one, isn't it? Who thought of this title? Functional earthing and functional equipotential bonding for information and communication technology, ICT equipment and systems. So what's gone in here, this is a very new section. This links to an extent to what's in 444 in BS 7671. So 444, when I get to the right page, there we are, 444. I'm going to read it to you, see. Measured against electromagnetic disturbances. Part 4 essentially is about where the principles are. You shall do this, you shall not do that. But part 5 is about the equipment. So this is like, this 545 is a step on from what's in 444. This tells you, so 444 has the principles. 545 has the way of doing it and what you need to do. So for instance, as you can see on the screen there, it has requirements for minimum cross-sectional area, and you see it mentions a bonding ring, big chunky kind of stuff in there. There's the identification of conductors. There's a requirement to have a main functional earthing terminal in there. As I mentioned there just a moment ago, equipotential bonding ring conductors are requirements in there. This is the kind of, I mean, this kind of thing, it's going to be a data center. It's going to be something of that level where you don't want any kind of corruption going on to the data that they're dealing with, banks, you know, that sort of thing. So there's not a big chapter, but if you're involved in that area, it is quite important. Next slide, please, Kevin. 551 low voltage generating sets. This has been going on for quite some time. I'm involved in a project internationally to move 551 into a part 7, because currently what we've got in 551, it's amending some of the general rules, which you shouldn't do that within part 5. You can amend the general rules in part 7, but not in part 5. Anyway, long story. But what's going on in here is, because we see how generating sets are being connected, and we see more and more of them, and even the last couple of weeks we've been talking about these plug-in PV solar generators, because they are generators, about how they can be connected. But this first point here, the generating set shall be installed on the supply side of all protected devices for the final circuits of a distribution board, and that's an important thing. What I'd also like to, as a discussion piece here, final circuits, if you look at the definition of final circuits in part 2, you'll see a final circuit is something which supplies loads. So topically, on this plug-in PV generator kind of thing that the government's pushing, that you might be able to buy from hardware stores, if you're plugging that into a circuit that doesn't have any other loads on, that wouldn't be a final circuit, because it's not supplying a load. Now, we don't define we do define a distribution circuit, but we don't define a circuit which is intended to bring in a source circuit, so there's a lot to be discussed in this. So it's this is something that will change again in the future. I'm really sure of it. The second part of this 551721 says here, for the purposes of this regulation, stationary secondary batteries, in accordance with chapter 57, shall be considered a generating set and not a load. So we'll look at chapter 57 in a moment. But what this is saying is that where you've got a battery and you're using the battery to supply the installation, you treat it as a generator. But when the battery is charging, it's not a generator at that point, it's a load. And that's what that paragraph is getting at. The next one is 551722, and these are indents that have gone in describing how, where a generating set is added to an installation, you've got to be careful, because let's say your bus bars are rated at 100 amps. In fact, if you go to the next slide, Kevin, I think there's a picture there that depicts this. Yeah. So what this is showing is, you've got the cut-out fuse at the top, 100 amps, and you've got 100 amps flowing. Then you've got a consumer unit, and then you've got the generating set at the bottom. So imagine you're drawing 100 amps from the consumer unit, you've got all these loads, and everything's happy because everything's rated at 100 amps, absolutely fine. But if you then add in a generating set and you add more load, you can be drawing from the middle end, the consumer unit, you can be drawing as depicted 116 amps, but that buzz bar within the consumer unit might only be rated at 100. So this is a really important point, that where you're adding sources, you've got to be aware of what's happening in the middle of it all, i.e. the middle being the consumer unit or distribution board, because you can, under certain circumstances, overload the assembly in there. Okay, for the next one, if you don't mind. Okay, this is the next big section here. This is Power over Ethernet 716. Conventionally, we've always had the opinion that the data sat elsewhere in the telecommunications world. It does, but now we're using these cables, these data cables, to power things. And where this has come from is that, we moved away from incandescent lamps, 100 watts, and we moved into LED. And LED is in comparison, super low power when compared to the 100-watt lamps. So you've got all this kind of stuff, and also within LED lamps, they can run on DC if they're configured correctly. So why use all this equipment? It's supplied by AC. You put your transformers for laptops, in TVs, and lamps. Why use it all at AC? You've got to convert to DC. There's all that loss. It gets hot. So this is where this is going. So Power over Ethernet, as it says there, in the scope 716.1, extra low voltage distributed over balanced information technology cables. So it's those data cables. From memory, I can't remember if they're 4-pair or 8-pair, 4-pair, 6-pair. I think it's 4-pair, but you'll correct me on that one. But you'll know is it the RJ11 or RJ45? I can't remember the type of connector. But within the section, it states what the BSEN number is for that type of connector. But it does say in there, as we get further down, the load current, design current of any conductor shall not exceed 750 milliamps. So that's where the design element comes in. You get this particular cable with the connector on the end. It plugs into the data unit, if you like, but we can use it to withdraw, use it to use the power side of things. I've got in my garden, I've got a Wi-Fi extender, and I'm using that in there for the first time, and it's working very well. And then the last one there is the types of wiring system, about how they should be installed, and the type of the British standard numbers for the cables. Again, it is venturing into data cable side, but we've always had that requirement in 7671. Clipping cables, it's essentially it's in the Selv and Pelv area. It's extra low voltage, and in 7671 in part 2, you'll see we've got band 1, band 2 circuits. Band 1 circuits are up to 50 volts AC, 120 volts DC, and band 2 is everything after that, up to 1000 volts AC, 1500 DC. So we've always had requirements for the cabling and the installation, and the TV installers that come and put the dish on your house and cables. The cables they install, they should be following BS 7671. We just haven't got involved in the ins and outs of what's been sent or broadcast in terms of the data side of things, and we won't. Other than in 444, we haven't got to corrupt the signal, of course, but that's something else. Touched on that earlier. But yes, it's about the power over Ethernet. Right, Kevin, next one, please. Interstationary secondary batteries. Now, this is new. This is where I see the bulk of interest as a separate kind of section to BS, or chapter of BS 7671 is coming from. We've been discussing this internationally for quite some time, and the approach. We've got low voltage generating sets in 551. We've got batteries in 57. In my mind, it should be the black box approach. You've just got this black box. You've got terminals coming out. Where does it come from? Who cares? Generate a battery. It's a source that's coming into the building, and I think that's what will happen in the future. I think that's where it'll go, particularly with prosumers in 82. Anyway, what's gone in this time? In 570.1, so requirements for stationary secondary battery installations as a source of supply for electrical installations. So remember, it's a source here, it's not a load at this point. So 576.3, the location of enclosure and stationary secondary batteries shall be adequately ventilated, taking account the manufacturer's instructions. And the next one as well is also about the location. Now, in 2024, we saw the publication of the PAS from BSI. PAS is publicly available specification, and the number there is 63100, and you can freely download this from the BSI website if you do a search. And this is all about bringing batteries stationary secondary batteries into dwellings, not wider than dwellings, but just dwellings, because we'd seen over the last few years there have been fires with scooters, charging of electric bikes, that kind of thing, and they've been on stairwells, they've been in flats, and they've caught fire, and it's been absolutely catastrophic when they go up. So what went into the PAS, which has now been brought into 7671, is don't install your batteries in stairwells, don't install them on escape routes, have them somewhere where they're going to be, as best you can, innocuous. Don't put them in lofts either, because crikey, that's another issue. But they should be ventilated, because some batteries can emit gases, and you need fresh air to be able to clean out that air. So there's a lot to think about there. And then the last one at the bottom, 5768, this is identification notices. This is if you've got batteries installed, you need to have the stickers there on the consumer unit and at the battery. So when somebody comes in to amend something, working in the kitchen, adding some sockets, for example, they can see that there's a problem. They need to isolate in a few different places, potentially. Right, thank you, Kevin. Next one. Into medical locations, I'm more or less at the end of it all, you'll be glad to hear. But Section 710 medical locations, there's been a vast amount of work gone into this. And I'm just going to pick up the salient points. And when I finish on this one, you'll see it isn't all bad news. The first one is in 710 3131 102. This is Group 2 locations. So Group 2 locations in a medical location is where you're in an operating theatre, open heart surgery. There's probes in the body which is coming from electrical equipment, The person's under sedation and obviously can't move if they're receiving a shock. But when the internals of the body's opened up, you lose the natural resistance to electricity that the skin has up to a point, and then you've got all the wet stuff on the inside, which is a conductor of electricity. So when you're in that area, you've got these probes into you is one thing, but when you're under the I was going to say under the hammer, that's a different show. When you're under the knife, the last thing you want is the power supply to go out in that area to the hospital. So in Group 2 locations, there are two independent power supplies which are necessary. So two supplies coming into that area. So if you lose one bank of sockets, for example, there's another bank of sockets where the surgeon and their team can plug in the equipment from. But there also needs to be provision of a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply. So that's been clarified, and that's really important. The next two regulations there about AFDDs in there, the big discussion about AFDDs. But the reason they don't want them in hospitals, of course, they don't want something tripping out. But the rationale is in medical locations is that they have systems where they're being monitored all the time. There's a rolling program of maintenance, keeping on top of everything. So they don't need AFDDs. They don't expect arcing to occur because they're not expecting the installation to deteriorate because they're on top of it all the time. That's where that comes from. And the last point here is schedule for supplementary protective bonding system tests. Now, if you've been if you've been unlucky enough to be in a hospital recently, you might find in certain areas you'll see the bonding, the buzz bars, possibly behind a glass panel, all labelled up, and you'll see the nuts tightened up on them, all green and yellow. And these are the supplementary bonding connectors to bring everything back to a central point. It's all about maintaining potentials across the area, anything metal, bolted together, because you keep everything at the same potential. Going back to my first point, open heart surgery, the last thing you want is for potentials to appear across equipment. So you've got protective equipotential bonding, supplementary protective equipotential bonding systems installed in this area to make sure you keep potentials down. Now then, there's a requirement in 710 to provide a schematic diagram to show where that one goes to that one, that one goes to that one. It's all numbered. Then you have what's on the screen here, a supplementary protective equipotential bonding recording schedule. So it means that this conductor number one, which goes from there to there, you can see on the diagram. It's all listed in the form here in the schedule. But it means that you can very quickly look at the schedule. You can see where it is, and you can go in and make a test and record the results in the form. It's a basic resistance test, but it ensures that the connections are still there, nothing's happened, hasn't deteriorated, because again, the last thing you want is deterioration in these areas. But what's been highlighted here, this is pushed in by IHEM. You'll see in BS 7671 in the Who's to Blame section, the membership. But IHEM is the Institution of Healthcare, Engineering and Estates Management. And what they wanted a system to reduce the time. So what they've got here is what they've arrived at in their minds is, rather than taking 2 hours to do a job and do all these tests and mark it down the form, it'll now take you 15 minutes. So by closing here, Kevin, I'll say it's not all bad news.
That's good to hear, Mark. And I don't think any of it's bad news, by the way, but that's fantastic, Mark. That was really insightful. I think you have another slide as well to go.
Is there? I thought I was done there. Go on then, next one. I was just checking you were paying attention, really.
Oh, I am. I'm enthralled. Please,
so
please continue. I think this is your last one. Sorry, Mark, over to you.
Yes, sorry. So this is section 722, electric vehicle charging installations. Now, what's gone in here is, right in the middle of all of that, you'll see in brackets RDC-PD. So an RDC-PD is a residual current device for DC, which are coming through. They haven't really existed up until now. But the RDC-PD, PD stands for protected device. And there are other RDC-DDs, which are disconnecting device. So an RDC-PD is protective device, so is the protection offered there. An RDC-DD is just a device to disconnect, so it'll get a signal from elsewhere to disconnect. So where I'm going with this is in 5313101 in 722. It says that unless supplied by a circuit using the protective measure of electrical separation, each charging point incorporating a socket outlet, blah, 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 shall be protected individually by an RCD. So what this is talking about, RCD protection for circuits and equipment charging electric vehicles. So what I'm highlighting here is you can, in certain circumstances, you might protect the circuit to the charge point. If the charge point includes some form of RCD protection, it needs to comply with this particular regulation in terms of the RCD protection. But what's gone on this time is that where you've got DC, so you might be charging at 500 volts DC, whatever, that you now, one option is you can use an RDC PD in the installation. So that's just what I'm highlighting here. That's gone in as another method of protecting against DC fault currents. So that is it, Kevin, I think.
Thank you, Mark. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. And hopefully you can take a moment to have a glass of water.
I will.
Well, thank you very much. What I'll do now, if you can, we'll try and stay within the hour. And I appreciate some people may be on their lunch breaks and may need to drop off at past. So it's possible we may overrun. And I'm glad, lots of great reactions, Mark. That's fantastic. But just to say, we will circulate this webinar afterwards as well, just in case you have to run back, you've got a class or get back to work. So I'll just, for that reason, I'll probably go over my bits a bit quicker. You'll be probably pleased to know. Just to talk about the new Wiring Regulations Award for Amendment 4. So this is a new award. However, it's important to stress that contractors, if you already hold the 18th edition award, you don't need to take it unless you just want to undertake CPD. So it won't be needed for qualified supervisors or for those, ECS GIB gold card holders. But you may be a learner, or your learners who have taken, the original award several years ago in 2018. So you have the opportunity to update to Amendment 4. And really, why is it a new award? It's just a technicality. It's possible we could have done a new unit, but we've had several iterations of changes, and it's been, nearly a decade since the original award was launched back in 2018. The award, same time tested format, 60 question on-screen exam. So you're currently delivering with another AO. It's the same format, same content, same exam setting specification as well. We also have teaching and learning resources for this qualification. These are all available free of charge. We're just updating them to Amendment 4. Centre coordinators can obtain them from EAL online services. So you've got schemes of work, PowerPoint presentations, and worksheets to support your learners to deliver that classroom teaching. And of course, you can incorporate that into your existing resources. I will talk about very quickly about impact of Amendment 4 on other qualifications. There are a series of qualifications with the 18th edition awards unit embedded within it. That includes the apprenticeship qualification in England and Northern Ireland, 7345, and all the other ones listed. We are updated. My colleague Jamie is updating these very thoroughly at the moment. So they will have the new wiring regulations unit within them. So what you can actually do, if you've got learners who are aligned to, Amendment 3 or previous version of that wiring regulations unit, you can actually pathway transfer them. If you're a centre, you can do this for free. You can move them so your learners will be aligned to the Amendment 4 unit. Important point to note, pathway transfers aren't available for the bottom two there, just because they're graded qualifications and typically done in the academic year. Now, there are a range of qualifications that are aligned, of course, to the wiring regulations and utilise BS 7671, IET on-site guide within the assessments. So from the 15th of April to the 15th of October, in line with, the amendments changeover, the on-screen tests are neutral and can be taken with Amendment 3 or 4 versions. From the 16th of October onwards, on-screen exams will be fully aligned to Amendment 4. And finally, other impacted qualifications, we have CPD awards, which utilise IET publications. You've got, all the ones listed there, initial verification, periodic inspection and testing, and the combined award. They will also be amendment neutral until up to October the 15th. From the 16th of October, fully aligned to Amendment 4. So if you have any questions after the webinar, please get in touch around that. And also for all other centre marked assessments, you can mark them in line with Amendment 3 or 4 up to the 15th of October. And again, from the 16th, mark in line with Amendment 4. I'll very quickly, briefly go over some of the teaching and learning resources we have available as well to support you. We've got resources for our level 2 fundamental inspection and testing qualification. Again, these are all available free of charge for our centres. We've got for EV charging award as well, which has recently been launched, and also for industry recognised inspection and testing awards, again available at no charge to you. So in the last parts of my slides, I just want to point out we'll be communicating our final plans for the non-apprenticeship pathway on the 7345 apprenticeship qualification in the coming weeks. We're just finalising that with the Electrotechnical Skills Partnership or TESP. And we're also, in other news, excited to announce some new CPD awards, one of which is the Level 3 award in the design, installation and commissioning of electronic security systems, which is now available. That's assessed for a 50-question on-screen exam and centre mark practical assessment. Excellent CPD award for electricians, and is actually an industry first. It's actually recognised for the recognised by ECS for the FES Security Operative Assessment, and ECS certificate holders will also, if they've done an ECS Health and Safety test, can also eligible to apply for the FES Systems Operative Blue Stripe card. And if there's any program managers, curriculum area managers listening, we're just in the final stages. We're going to be launching a new award in design, installation, maintenance of air source heat pump award as well. We've developed that with the using Heat Pump Association content. So 30 GLH qualification assessed by on-screen exam, practical assessment, and centre mark design task. Recognised by FlexiOrb, they're an actual alternative to MCS, and we're just finalising MCS recognition as well. And finally, a bit of a whirlwind update from me. We're also rolling out remote invigilation of exams in 2026, so more details will follow. This will therefore enable students to undertake examinations remotely from the centre. So this is ideal for your wiring regulations, if you're a lecturer or centre, and other CPD awards. So just to highlight some other things you may be interested in if you're teaching. We've got NICIC. They've got a series of guides and learning guides available you can pick those up directly from the NIC website. So please refer to the links on the slides, and we'll forward that round to you after the presentation today. So last slide for me, just some information to raise awareness on the IET's publications and when they're being updated. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to read through all of those, but again, it's information there. And I believe on top of these, we're involved with the IET across, as other organisations are, helping them with their various other guides and things. They've got some other good codes of practice and things coming out as well. So thank you very much for listening. We hope you found the information useful. If you have any questions or feedback, please use the question and answer functions. We may just pause for a few moments while we bring up your typed questions. So I'll just go into the chat now. So let's have a look. So there's a question here from Ian Miner. Hi, Ian. Probably for you here, Mark. What will the impact be with the introduction of plug-in PV panels, as they will be purchased by the homeowner after the installation is completed? Is there any changes required for future amendments to BS 7671?
As the designer, installer, certifier, you design an electrical installation, you install it, you test it, you hand it over for use, and you walk away. After that, it's operational. So what they plug into it, you have no control over that. The products, by law, products have to be suitable and safe. They've got to comply with legislation. So if products are coming into the country and they're being plugged in by those that want to use them, and they're causing fires or dangers or whatever, people are being injured, it's not the fault of the installation. So there's a number of other points here. There isn't an international product standard for these devices yet. Germany, there's a standard internally, as a VDEV standard, 0126 it is. They have a standard for how that works in that country. But elsewhere, internationally, the committees I'm involved with there, we can't put requirements in because, one, there's no standard for them, so therefore we don't know how they operate. Do they shut down in 5 milliseconds? When you parallel them up, do they stay live the whole time? So until we get some real grounding in that area, there's very little BS 7671 can do. But I view it rather like EMC. That device shouldn't interfere with that device. And if that device does interfere with that device should still be operational. And it's the same thing with electrical installation. You can plug in lots of heaters. Well, if you do, the fuse or circuit breaker should deal with it, and you shouldn't overload the circuit because it's being designed accordingly. So until we've got something designed to, we can't do anything about that. But if you can get access to BS 1363 Part 1 2023, this is the standard for plugs and sockets, 13 amp plugs and sockets and FCUs and the like. But you'll find in clause 5, it states in there clearly, socket outlets shall not be used for the connection of low voltage generating sets by a plug. So right now, our sockets in the UK are not intended, not designed to have power being pumped in. We can apply loads to socket outlets and feed loads, but we can't plug in through those particular devices. So I haven't got an answer, but that's what I know so far.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. There's quite a few questions actually, but I think what I'll try and do where possible, Mark, I know you're a busy man, but maybe we could get back with some responses after the webinar. We could potentially go through these and circulate them, but we'll try and get through as many as we can at the moment. There's one here about the classification codes. I think this is an interesting one for EICRs. Will they change under 521.10.202? Because we spoke about this earlier. There has been an update to C1, C2, that clear split, and FI as well. So I don't know if that relates to that particular question.
So just before I answer the question from the attendee, I didn't get the name. I'm sorry, but to answer your question, Kevin, in the EICR and on the form, there's been very intentional to separate C1, C2 from C3 and FI. So C1 is immediate danger, so it's unsatisfactory. C2, something's missing, but something needs to go wrong for there to be an immediate danger. So something is not an immediate danger, but it's still a C2, C2. It's still unsatisfactory as a C2. C3 is it's satisfactory, but it might be something that doesn't comply with the current version, but it was fine in the past. So you might want to upgrade it, you might not, but it's just a note about that. FI's what the committee's opinion was. FI was being used by unscrupulous types to say there's an FI here and trying to drum more work out of it. And the committee's opinion was FI was never about bringing an unsatisfactory result. FI was about, there's a cable disappeared somewhere and I can't find it. I can't say whether it's unsatisfactory or satisfactory. So I can't say it's unsatisfactory. So that's been the approach. If you can't give someone a definite answer, you put it over to the client and say, look, I can't find where that goes. I've no idea if it's unsatisfactory or satisfactory, so I can't code it as unsatisfactory. If you want me to investigate it, I advise you to get it investigated. If you want me to investigate it, it's going to cost you more money. But that puts the onus on them. And by law, under Electricity Work Regulations 1989, they have to provide a safe installation for use by their employees. So the onus is put the onus back onto the client. It's for them to them with your help, but they have to make a decision on it. And if they don't make a decision, you've done your bit. You've informed them of it, and you've left it with them for them to make the decision. The other bit was so 421 was about. I think he's talking about cable. Is it cables clipped somewhere?
Yeah. So the question is, will the classification code for EICRs change under 521.10.202?
Well, by classification code, I think you're talking about for an inspector making an assessment. And if that's the way I'm interpreting the question, BS 7671 doesn't offer an interpretation of what an inspector finds on site. You know, NAPIT has a code breakers book, for example. Electrical Safety First has Best Practice Guide 4 to offer interpretations. So I've dodged that bullet, Kevin. BS 7671 doesn't offer interpretation, so it's elsewhere.
That's good. Yeah. So there's industry guidance there. Thanks, Mark. Another question here in regards to PoE, coax, etc. As you mentioned, band one band one and two cables are introduced in BS 7671. Should new installs on domestic be notified, certified? How is this policed as such? Sky BT security installers will use plastic clips around the door frame. I'm sure that Sky BT, and it was just used as an example there, but
yeah. So notification is very interesting, isn't it? Because let's just focus on England. I know there's with the devolved nations, but if I just focus on what Part P in England, if it's a new circuit, you need to notify, for example. That is a good question. And I don't have an answer. If you're providing a new circuit from the consumer unit, that is very clear. You know, it's mains into an outlet and for the connection of equipment. That is very clear. If you're providing a new circuit on the PoE side, that is interesting. I can't answer that. I'll take that back. That's a really good one. I mean, to take the bit about the clipping, all the clipping, of course, cables in the right areas, not protective escape routes in this instance, but certainly in evacuation routes or ways out the building, clipping cables around door frames. Yeah, it can be done, but you need to use the right kind of clips that are not prone to premature collapse. So the TV installers, I won't cite the companies you cited there, but when they come into your house and they clip cables, yes, they're band one circuits, the elements of BS 7671 that need to be applied there. But that one about a new circuit for PoE, it's not immediate. I mean, there might be overheating issues, but in the discussions I had actually about when this was first discussed, there's a chap from the cable side, and my question to him was, do you know of any fires in the data world? Not from the data world was his response, but there's certainly been overheating where badly designed circuits have been used, and this 750 milliamps per conductor has been exceeded.
Mm.
So, and
That's
I
yeah,
can't answer that, but it's food for thought. But thank you. That's a really good question. Do you want me to?
yeah.
How will I get back to that? Will I get back to you with that?
Well, what I'll do, I'll collate all the because I think we've got so many questions. We're not going to be able to get through them all, but I'm just going to pick a couple more. But we'll make every effort to respond to all of these. And now I've got a good one which I think you touched on earlier, and I think it's around cost of regs books. So student may return old book to IT and get some refund and pay less for new book. Paying so it's just around the cost. Paying £100 for a book is quite a lot. I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it, Mark? But it's had a few thumbs ups there about the costs of Reg's book
Yeah.
as effectively. So what are your thoughts on that?
So the first one about returning your books, well, you can certainly try that, but it's not my department. Just you can get into the sales department and speak to them. So that's maybe not fair, but yeah, you can certainly try. But I very much doubt they would. Um, as I touched on earlier, that standards will continue to evolve, and this British standard, it isn't just the IET's opinion. Oh, let's have another book. It's got to follow the rules for a British standard, and when the British standard is based on European standards, we update this every 4 years. If you look at the front end, again, going back to the preface, page 18, you'll see in there all those HDs that are referenced. In the front, if you've ever seen an HD, in the front, in the early pages, it says that countries like the UK, part of Senelec. Senelec is the electrical body of Sen in Europe. Member countries have 3 years to remove. Sorry, 3 years to implement and to remove any contradiction or duplication. Now we go every 4 years essentially, unless there's a quick amendment. Well, the quick amendments aren't sold when they come out of the woodwork. There's safety issues that dealt with. But we update BS 7671 every 4 years. And same we in cahoots with BSR. We've never been challenged on it when the requirement for HDs is 3 years. So if you push it, if it's pushed, it might be you've got to do it every 3 years. So we don't want that. But I get the point. Yeah, to buy another book after you bought it last time, it's a lot.
Mm.
I've seen one of the. I don't know whether you're aware. Earlier this week, there was a wholesale. In fact, I think you call them both organisations were wholesalers. They were selling Reg's book on Monday and Tuesday ahead of the Wednesday release, and it was kind of like, what's going on? Are we seeing fake copies already? It was that kind of panic that goes on in the minds of publishers.
Mm.
But when a standard's up, the standard will be updated now. Then, do you want a hard copy or do you want it electronically? It's available electronically. In each case, yes, there's a charge. But
Mm.
me being an old guy, I like books. But it will get to a point where it will be all electronic. But the cost, yes, it has gone up. But where I was
Yeah.
going with this, one of the wholesalers that has been selling it early this week, you look at their price, and if you go to the Bank of England's compound interest calculator that's on there, and you put in it cost this in 2022, what will it cost now? You'll find that what they're selling it for is below inflation. I know that doesn't
Okay.
help. So
Mm.
it is below inflation,
Yeah.
ever so much, ever so slightly, but it is. And equally with the guidance, I mean, everything's gone up. And
Yeah.
IET has not just the regs, of course, because it's jointly with BSI, but the publications on the periphery. IET has a commitment to industry and to members to provide information should they need it. You don't have to buy those books. I don't know what your position is on an awarding body, what you want people to arrive at courses with, but
Mm.
it's not a legal requirement to buy. It's not a legal requirement to buy BS 7671, but the information is there should you need it, and that's been the approach.
Yeah, I think my first reg book was, I don't know, is it £45 or something? I can't remember now, but yeah, and I did look at, is it BS 5839 and some of these other standards, they're a few £100, aren't they? Some of these other
They are.
so I think you do, if you compare it to other BSI standards, it's actually quite good value from that perspective, I guess, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah,
So
yeah. In
um
Germany, again, going back to the preface, you can see all the separate sections of BS 7671 and parts. In Germany, they buy them all individually, and to buy the whole lot, you're pushing kind of €3,000. So Yeah, you look
Wow.
at 5839, 5266 there, you know, for a non-member, you're sort of in the £300
Yeah.
area, and they're, you know, what, 20 odd pages or something, maybe a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we got now?
Thank you, Mark.
630. There we are.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it. What we'll do, we'll take one more question before we close, and just say we'll circulate the slides. I've seen one other question about pathway transfer, about which department to contact at EAL. We will respond to all of these. I think this makes a good question, Mark. So this is 551.7.1. Has made a swift change from the DPC, not quite aligning with that in solar PV code of practice. Can you expand on this, please, Mark? It says.
So
I can reread that.
551.7.1. So I'm cheating here. I've got the book. This is additional requirements for installations where the generating set may operate in parallel with the sources, including the distributor. So the change here, when a generating set is used as additional source supply in parallel to the source, all of the following shall be fulfilled. Protection against thermal effects. Where an RCD is provided additional protection, circuit generation shall disconnect all live conductors, as in 415.1. That's additional protection for an RCD. Yeah, get that. Yeah, all live conductors. Protect devices shall be selected in accordance with 530. Okay. Except where RCD disconnects all live conductors, including the neutral conductor, source of supply shall not be connected to the load side of an RCD, providing additional protection in accordance with that. Where this one came from, I think that the question might be related to D. So part D, indent D, 55171D. This is where source of supply shall not be connected on the load side to any RCD. And I think discussions about this were
Indent D, yeah. Mark, who's his post question, yeah, Indent D.
And this, I'm sure this came about with where you have a split load board, because under certain conditions, you then can be affecting the other side, the RCDs. I think that's where it came from. I'd have to drill further back on that one, but that's my number. Shall not be connected to the load side. That not be connected to the load side of the RCD, because you see with an RCBO, you've just got the one device on that one circuit, and granted you're going into the bus bar. This way, if you've got one RCD, you're immediately connected to that RCD through to the other circuits on that split load board, on that RCD on that side of the board. Shall not be connected to the load side by this protection. And it's providing additional protection.
Well, if it needs a bit further research, Mark, because I know I'm putting you on the spot here, so it might be something we can have a look at, and you can have a look at, and get back.
I will.
Yeah.
So that's 2-0. That's 2 I couldn't answer properly then.
So we got great people posing questions on the webinar today. Nice. So this is good, and that's the other good thing about joining these webinars and interacting with yourself, I guess, Mark. So fantastic. So there are a few other questions. We will have these. We will circulate the slides as well. I'm just going to finish off then, just to say massive thank you to you, Mark. Really insightful, great presentation. I think everyone really enjoyed it. And just to say, we had a LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, got BSE group, connect with that. Connect with our technical advisor team. Andy, you can email us, and also if you've got any questions about qualifications, reach out to our customer experience team as well. They're absolutely fantastic as well. So really, it's just bringing the webinar to the close. I hope you enjoyed the updates today. We hope you found it useful. Please get in touch if you have any further questions, and wishing you a good week, and hopefully see you all again soon. So thank you very much, and thank you again, Mark, and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Just before you finish this, I've just remembered this D 55171. I know it's up to the minute. D. It's about where you've got a switch, where you've got a split load board. That RCD might not be switching the neutral, and that's anyway. I'll get back to that properly. Sorry, I'm wrong.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Don't lose sleep. Thanks, Mark. Take care, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.